Hello everyone and welcome to the English Fluent Journey. I'm Jasmine, your guide on this immersive journey to improve your English listening skills at an advanced level. In today's episode, we'll explore one of the most essential and relatable topics for IELTS candidates and international students alike: education and university life. This podcast is designed to help you practice high-level listening comprehension while also expanding your academic vocabulary and understanding the kind of themes that often appear in IELTS Listening Section 3 and Section 4. So wherever you are right now, walking to class, riding the bus, or just relaxing at home, I invite you to listen carefully, follow along, and imagine you're right here with me. Let me take you back to the first week I arrived at university. It was a mix of excitement, nervousness, and complete uncertainty. The campus was buzzing with activity, orientation tents, flyers being handed out, students from every corner of the world chatting, laughing, and trying to find their way around. I still remember holding my map upside down, looking hopelessly confused while trying to locate the main lecture theatre. That moment was a perfect metaphor for how the first semester often feels: disoriented but full of potential. For many international students, especially those studying in English-speaking countries, the academic environment can feel like stepping into a completely new world. You suddenly need to manage coursework, seminars, reading assignments, and social life, all in a language that isn't your first. It can be daunting, but it's also incredibly rewarding. One of the most challenging aspects of university life is learning how to study independently. In high school, and even in some education systems around the world, students are given more structured guidance. But once you enter university, the expectation shifts. Professors assume that students will take initiative, reading beyond the assigned material, preparing for seminars in advance, and submitting well-researched original essays. This transition requires a set of skills that many students haven't fully developed yet. I personally struggled with time management in the beginning. I was so used to last-minute cramming that I underestimated how long it would take to write a 2,000-word research paper, not to mention the time needed to do background reading, draft, edit, and properly cite sources using academic conventions. Another big hurdle was academic writing itself. Writing essays in English at a university level is very different from writing in everyday situations. You're expected to use formal vocabulary, demonstrate critical thinking, and structure your arguments clearly with evidence. I often found myself confused by the feedback I received. One professor kept telling me to analyze, don't just describe. At first, I didn't quite grasp what that meant. Eventually, I realized that academic analysis involves not just stating what others have said, but also evaluating their arguments, comparing different viewpoints, and forming your own conclusions. It took me several months of practice and lots of tutor meetings before I started feeling more confident in my academic voice. Social life at university is another interesting dimension. There's this widespread idea that university life is all about parties, clubs, and endless freedom. While that's partly true, the reality is a bit more nuanced. For many students, particularly international students, the first few weeks can actually feel quite lonely. You're far from your family, adapting to a new culture and trying to make friends in a language that might not come naturally. I remember attending welcome events and struggling to keep up with group conversations. People were using idioms, slang, and inside jokes I didn't understand. But I kept trying. I joined a few clubs, attended language exchange meetups, and slowly things got better. Friendships take time, and feeling comfortable in a new environment is a gradual process. One thing that really helped me adjust was forming a study routine. I started treating university like a full-time job. I would wake up, go to the library at a set time, take regular breaks, and limit my study hours in the evening. This routine gave me structure and helped me avoid burnout. I also began using digital tools like academic planners, Pomodoro timers, and cloud-based note-taking apps. These small habits made a huge difference. And let's not forget the importance of mental health. University can be overwhelming, and it's essential to recognize when you need support. I made use of the university's counselling service during my second year when academic stress started to take a toll on my sleep and concentration. It wasn't easy to ask for help, but it was the right decision, and it made a big difference in my ability to cope. Let's talk about lectures and seminars, the backbone of university learning. At first, I thought lectures were just passive listening sessions. I would sit there, trying to write down every word the professor said, without really understanding most of it. But I soon learned that effective listening means focusing on key ideas, identifying the lecturer's structure, and noting down only what's relevant. Most professors have their own speaking style, and it takes time to adapt. Some speak very quickly, others use a lot of technical language, and a few even go off topic. My strategy was to review lecture slides before class, which gave me a mental map of what to expect. I also recorded some lectures, with permission, so I could revisit parts I didn't understand. As for seminars, they were a great opportunity to interact, ask questions, and explore topics more deeply. Initially, I was nervous about speaking up, worried about making grammar mistakes or not sounding academic enough. But gradually I realized that participation matters more than perfection. Professors appreciate students who engage actively, even if their language isn't flawless. Let me also highlight the importance of reading in university education. Unlike school, where you might get a textbook and a few assignments, university courses often require you to read dozens of journal articles, book chapters, and case studies. At first, I was overwhelmed by the volume. I didn't know how to prioritize or how to read critically. But I learned that you don't always have to read every word. It's about identifying the argument, understanding the evidence, and evaluating the source. Skimming, scanning, and annotating became essential techniques. I even started color-coding my notes to keep track of key points, counter-arguments, and useful quotations. Over time, reading academic texts became less intimidating and more enjoyable, especially when I was genuinely interested in the topic. Lastly, let's talk about personal growth. University is more than just a place to get a degree. It's a transformative experience that shapes who you are. You learn to live independently, manage finances, navigate cultural differences, and make decisions that will influence your future. It's not always smooth sailing. You'll face failures, rejections, and moments of doubt, but you'll also experience breakthroughs, friendships, and a growing sense of confidence. I entered university as someone who doubted her abilities and feared making mistakes. I graduated with the understanding that learning is a lifelong process and that it's okay to not have all the answers. What matters most is curiosity, resilience, and the willingness to grow. That brings us to the end of part 1 of today's podcast. I hope that sharing my personal experience gave you some useful insights into what university life is really like, both the challenges and the triumphs. As you continue preparing for the IELTS exam, remember that topics like education, student life, and academic challenges are very common in the listening test. Practicing with real-life examples like this will sharpen your skills and give you the confidence you need on test day. Welcome back to the English Fluent Journey. I'm Jasmine, and I'm so glad you've joined me for part 2 of our Advanced English Listening podcast. If you've already listened to part 1, you know we talked about the personal experience of university life and the challenges students face. Now in part 2, we're going to shift to a more academic tone and dive into a lecture-style discussion. Today's topic is learning styles and student performance. This is an area that has been widely researched in educational psychology, and it also frequently appears in IELTS listening tests. I encourage you to listen closely, take notes if you wish, and imagine that you're sitting in a real university lecture hall. Let's begin by defining the concept of learning styles. In simple terms, learning styles refer to the preferred ways in which individuals absorb, process, and retain information. Over the years, several theories have emerged to categorize learners based on these preferences. One of the most well-known frameworks is the VARK model, which was developed by Neil Fleming in the late 1980s. VARK stands for visual, auditory, reading, writing, and kinesthetic. According to this model, visual learners understand information better when it is presented in the form of charts, graphs, diagrams, or other visual formats. Auditory learners, on the other hand, prefer listening to spoken information, such as lectures or discussions. Reading-writing learners retain knowledge best through written words, while kinesthetic learners learn through hands-on experiences, movement, and real-world interaction. Now, it's important to recognize that most people don't fit neatly into just one category. In fact, research has shown that many students are multimodal learners, meaning they use a combination of styles depending on the context and the task at hand. For example, a student might prefer watching videos to understand a scientific concept, but also benefit from taking notes and practicing through physical experiments. While the idea of learning styles has gained widespread popularity among educators and students alike, it's also been the subject of criticism. Some experts argue that the evidence linking learning styles to improved academic performance is weak. They suggest that focusing too much on style may distract from other, more important factors like study habits, motivation, and prior knowledge. That leads us to the next section of our discussion: the relationship between learning styles and academic achievement. Several studies have attempted to explore whether teaching students in their preferred learning style results in better performance. The findings have been mixed. A 2006 meta-analysis by Paschler and colleagues concluded that there was insufficient evidence to support the matching hypothesis, the idea that students learn best when instruction is tailored to their style. Instead, they recommended that educators focus on evidence-based teaching strategies that work for most students, regardless of their style. However, some smaller studies have shown promising results, particularly in disciplines like medicine and engineering, where kinesthetic learning and visual aids can be extremely beneficial. Let's consider an example. Imagine a biology professor teaching about the human circulatory system. If the professor simply delivers a verbal lecture without visual aids, auditory learners might benefit, but others might struggle. Now imagine the same lecture supported by detailed diagrams of the heart, animated videos showing blood flow, and a hands-on lab activity where students build a model of the circulatory system. In this scenario, multiple learning styles are addressed, potentially enhancing comprehension and retention for a broader group of students. This is what we call multisensory instruction, and it's widely regarded as one of the most effective approaches to teaching, especially in diverse classrooms. Another factor to consider is metacognition, which refers to one's awareness and understanding of their own learning processes. Students who understand their learning preferences and actively choose strategies that align with those preferences often perform better. Not because of the preference itself, but because they are more engaged, proactive, and reflective learners. For instance, a student who knows they struggle with auditory learning may take the initiative to read transcripts, use subtitles, or review written summaries after a lecture. These self-regulated learning behaviors can have a far greater impact on academic success than learning style alone. It's also worth discussing how technology has transformed the way students engage with learning styles. With the rise of digital education, students now have access to a wide range of multimedia content, from interactive simulations and video tutorials to online quizzes and virtual flashcards. This has made it easier than ever for learners to choose the format that suits them best. Educational platforms often incorporate gamification elements to appeal to kinesthetic learners, while visual learners can benefit from infographics and animated presentations. In this way, technology has helped bridge the gap between traditional teaching methods and personalized learning experiences. At this point, I want to highlight a growing trend in higher education known as Universal Design for Learning, or UDL. This is a framework that promotes flexible learning environments that accommodate individual learning differences, rather than forcing students to adapt to one fixed method of instruction. UDL encourages educators to offer multiple means of representation, engagement, and expression. In practice, this might mean offering lecture content in both audio and visual formats, allowing students to choose between writing an essay or giving a presentation for their assessment, or integrating hands-on projects alongside theoretical discussions. By embracing this inclusive approach, institutions can better support the diverse needs of their students and improve overall learning outcomes. Now, let's address a common question among students. How do I find my learning style? While there are many online quizzes that promise to identify your style, experts recommend a more practical approach. Start by observing how you respond to different types of content. Do you find it easier to remember information from diagrams or from listening to someone explain it? Do you take better notes when writing by hand, or do you prefer typing? Do you like studying in groups, or do you retain more when studying alone? These kinds of reflections can help you identify the strategies that work best for you. But remember, your preferences may evolve over time and in different learning situations. Flexibility is key. To wrap up this academic segment, let me emphasize a few takeaways. First, while learning styles can be a useful framework for self-reflection, they are not the sole predictor of academic success. What matters more is developing effective study habits, being adaptable, and staying motivated. Second, students should not feel limited by their identified style. It's beneficial to try different methods. Read aloud, watch videos, discuss topics with peers, or even teach what you've learned to someone else. Each of these strategies activates different parts of the brain and can deepen your understanding. And third, educators should aim to create inclusive learning environments that incorporate a range of instructional methods to support all learners. In the next part of this podcast, we'll continue exploring the world of education with a focus on critical thinking and problem-solving skills in university settings. These are essential competencies not just for academic success, but also for career readiness and life beyond graduation. We'll examine how these skills are taught, assessed, and applied in real-world contexts. So stay tuned for part 3, and thank you again for learning with me here at the English Fluent Journey. Remember, practice makes progress, and you're already one step closer to mastering advanced English listening. Welcome back, dear listeners, to the English Fluent Journey. I'm Jasmine, and I'm truly happy to be with you again in this third part of our journey through advanced English listening. Today we're focusing on a critical area in modern education: critical thinking and problem-solving skills. These two competencies are not just academic buzzwords. They are fundamental abilities that shape a student's success at university, influence career opportunities, and deeply affect the way people engage with the world around them. In this part of the podcast, I will explore what these skills really mean, how they're developed in university settings, and why they are essential in the 21st century knowledge economy. Let's begin by defining critical thinking. At its core, critical thinking refers to the ability to analyze information objectively, evaluate evidence, identify biases, and reach reasoned conclusions. It involves asking questions, examining assumptions, and not taking things at face value. For example, if a student is presented with 2 conflicting research articles on climate change, a critical thinker will not simply accept one over the other based on who wrote it. Instead, they will look closely at the data, assess the sources, consider the methodologies, and compare the arguments presented. This level of deep thinking is what universities around the world strive to instill in their students, an intellectual maturity that goes beyond memorizing facts. Closely connected to critical thinking is the concept of problem solving. This skill involves identifying a challenge, exploring possible solutions, choosing the best one, and implementing it effectively. In academic settings, students face countless problem-solving scenarios, whether in the form of mathematical equations, scientific experiments, engineering tasks, or even writing persuasive essays. But problem-solving is not limited to technical fields. For example, a student in a sociology class might be tasked with finding a solution to reduce urban poverty, requiring a multidisciplinary approach that includes policy analysis, ethical reasoning, and creative thinking. In essence, problem-solving is about applying knowledge in practical and often complex situations. Now, how are these skills actually taught at the university level? In the past, education was heavily based on rote learning and passive absorption of information. However, modern pedagogy has shifted towards active learning strategies. One widely used approach is problem-based learning, or PBL. In this method, students are presented with a real-world problem without being given direct instructions on how to solve it. They work collaboratively in groups, research independently, and apply what they've learned to develop solutions. The teacher acts more like a facilitator than a lecturer. This approach is particularly effective in medical schools, business programs, and engineering departments, where students must be able to diagnose issues, think critically, and act decisively. Another approach is case-based teaching, especially common in law and business education. Students examine real-life or hypothetical cases, analyze legal or ethical issues, and present their judgments. This not only strengthens reasoning skills, but also improves verbal and written communication. Similarly, universities often use debates and presentations to encourage critical engagement with content. When students must argue a position, respond to counter-arguments, and support their views with evidence, they are actively developing critical thinking muscles. These exercises also promote confidence, public speaking ability, and clarity of thought, all of which are valuable beyond the academic environment. It's also worth noting that critical thinking is often developed through academic writing. When students are required to write argumentative essays or research papers, they must synthesize information from various sources, structure their thoughts logically, and defend their conclusions with credible evidence. This process demands not only a command of language, but also the ability to think deeply and critically. Universities typically offer writing workshops and support centers to help students improve these skills, recognizing their importance across all disciplines. Now let's talk about assessment. How do universities evaluate whether students have developed critical thinking and problem-solving skills? Unlike factual knowledge, which can be tested through multiple-choice questions, these skills are often assessed through more open-ended tasks. These may include written essays, reflective journals, group projects, oral presentations, and, in some cases, simulated real-world scenarios. For example, in some medical schools, students participate in objective structured clinical examinations, OSCEs, where they must interact with simulated patients and make diagnostic decisions on the spot. This tests not only their technical knowledge, but also their decision-making, communication, and ethical reasoning. A challenge faced by many institutions is how to measure critical thinking consistently and fairly across diverse student populations. Some universities have introduced standardized tests, like the Collegiate Learning Assessment CLA, which measures critical thinking, analytical reasoning, and problem-solving. However, critics argue that such tests may not capture the full complexity of these skills, especially in culturally diverse or non-English speaking environments. As a result, there's a growing trend towards portfolio assessments, where students collect evidence of their learning over time, including reflections, projects, peer feedback, and self-evaluations. This approach allows for a more holistic and personalized view of student growth. Let's now consider the real-world application of these skills. In today's global workforce, employers consistently rank critical thinking and problem-solving among the top skills they seek in graduates. Whether you're working in finance, technology, education, or healthcare, the ability to analyze situations, make informed decisions, and adapt to change is invaluable. For instance, a marketing analyst might need to interpret sales data, identify trends, and suggest a new strategy. A teacher might have to handle classroom conflicts, respond to diverse learning needs, and design creative lesson plans. A software engineer might face bugs in code that require innovative solutions under tight deadlines. In all these cases, the foundation of success lies in the ability to think clearly and solve problems effectively. Interestingly, global surveys show that many employers believe recent graduates lack sufficient problem-solving experience. This has led to stronger partnerships between universities and industries, with programs like internships, co-op placements, and service learning becoming more common. These experiences allow students to apply classroom knowledge in real-world environments, reflect on their performance, and gain insights into their professional strengths and weaknesses. Universities are also investing in entrepreneurship hubs, where students work on startup ideas and innovation challenges that simulate the unpredictability and complexity of real business scenarios. Another vital factor is cultural competence. In an increasingly interconnected world, students must be able to think critically in cross-cultural contexts. This means questioning their own assumptions, understanding diverse perspectives, and engaging in respectful dialogue with people from different backgrounds. Critical thinking, in this sense, is not just about logic, it's also about empathy, humility, and openness to learning. Universities are embedding this into their curricula through global education programs, international exchanges, and courses in ethics, diversity, and social justice. These experiences prepare students not just for jobs, but for citizenship in a global society. To conclude this part of our podcast, I want to emphasize that critical thinking and problem-solving are not skills you either have or don't have. They are skills you can develop with consistent effort and reflection. They grow stronger when we challenge ourselves, when we question rather than accept, and when we embrace complexity rather than avoid it. Whether you're a university student preparing for your next assignment or an IELTS candidate working to improve your listening comprehension, remember that every piece of information you process can be a chance to think critically. Ask yourself, what is the source? What are the assumptions? What alternatives exist? These questions will not only sharpen your mind, but also empower you to make better decisions in every area of life. Thank you once again for listening to the English Fluent Journey. In the next part of this series, we'll explore the role of online learning and digital transformation in higher education. We'll look at how universities are evolving in the digital age, the benefits and limitations of e-learning, and how technology is reshaping student experiences. Until then, stay curious, stay thoughtful, and keep challenging yourself to grow. I'm Jasmine, and I'll see you in Part 4. Hello again, my wonderful listeners. This is Jasmine, welcoming you to Part 4 of our Advanced IELTS Listening podcast series, The English Fluent Journey. If you've been following along, you already know we've explored several core aspects of university life: academic culture, critical thinking, and problem-solving. Now we move into a topic that has dramatically reshaped education over the past decade, especially after the global pandemic: online learning and the digital transformation of higher education. This episode will guide you through how technology is changing the university experience, both the opportunities it brings and the challenges it creates. Let's begin with a basic observation. The traditional classroom is no longer the only space where learning happens. Today, education can occur anywhere: at home, in a cafe, on a train, or even during a walk, thanks to online platforms, mobile apps, and cloud-based tools. With just a laptop or smartphone and an internet connection, students now have access to an immense library of courses, lectures, research papers, and collaborative tools. Platforms like Coursera, edX, and Khan Academy have brought high-quality content from top universities to millions of learners around the world. Some universities even offer full degrees online with live lectures, virtual labs, and interactive assessments, providing a flexible alternative for people who cannot attend in-person classes. The shift toward online learning isn't just about convenience, it reflects a deeper transformation in how knowledge is delivered and consumed. In a digital classroom, the learning model often becomes asynchronous, meaning students can watch recorded lectures and complete assignments at their own pace. This flexibility is a game changer, especially for students who work part-time jobs, have family responsibilities, or live in different time zones. It allows them to tailor their education to fit their personal schedule. Additionally, recorded content can be paused, replayed, or sped up, something that's not possible in a traditional lecture hall. But online learning also brings synchronous elements, such as live Zoom classes, real-time discussions, and breakout rooms. These features try to replicate the sense of classroom interaction. Instructors can still ask questions, use digital whiteboards, or organize group activities. Some platforms also use polling tools and chat functions to encourage participation. However, the effectiveness of these tools often depends on students' digital literacy and access to stable internet connections. While many students thrive in this environment, others struggle with motivation, screen fatigue, or the lack of face-to-face social interaction. This brings us to an important point. While online learning offers new opportunities, it also highlights digital inequality. Students from disadvantaged backgrounds may not have reliable access to devices, high-speed internet, or a quiet space to study. This creates a digital divide, where some students benefit fully from online learning while others are left behind. Universities are trying to address this by offering free laptops, internet subsidies, and on-campus tech hubs. But the challenge remains significant, especially in low-income countries or rural areas where digital infrastructure is weak. True digital transformation must include efforts to close this gap and ensure that every student has an equal chance to succeed. Another major development in digital education is the rise of learning management systems, LMS. These are platforms like Moodle, Blackboard, and Canvas that allow students to access course materials, submit assignments, check grades, and communicate with instructors, all in one place. LMS platforms help organize the learning experience, making it easier for students to track their progress. Many also include forums, quizzes, and feedback tools. From an administrative perspective, these systems enable universities to collect data on student performance and engagement, which can be used to improve teaching strategies and offer personalized support. In addition to LMS platforms, we are witnessing a boom in educational apps and AI-driven tools. For example, Grammarly helps students polish their writing. Language learning apps like Duolingo and Babbel assist with vocabulary and pronunciation. And citation tools like Zotero or Mendeley help manage academic sources. Artificial intelligence is even being used to create virtual tutors that can answer questions, generate summaries, and offer feedback on essays. While these tools can enhance learning, they also raise questions about academic integrity. Some students may be tempted to use AI to complete assignments dishonestly, and universities are now developing policies to address this new ethical challenge. Let's talk a little more about virtual classrooms. With platforms like Google Meet, Zoom, or Microsoft Teams, lectures can be streamed to hundreds of students at once. Professors can share screens, give digital presentations, and record sessions for later use. Some classes even incorporate gamified learning, using quizzes, leaderboards, and interactive activities to keep students engaged. Virtual labs have been created for science subjects, allowing students to simulate experiments in chemistry biology, or physics. For fields like architecture or engineering, virtual reality, VR, and augmented reality, AR, are starting to play a bigger role, giving students a 3D, immersive experience of their designs or concepts. Interestingly, the online learning model also changes the role of the instructor. In a digital environment, teachers are no longer just lecturers. They become facilitators, content creators, and tech navigators. They must design their courses for screen-based consumption, often creating slides, videos, quizzes, and online discussion prompts. This demands not only subject expertise, but also digital skills and creativity. Many universities are now offering professional development programs to help educators improve their online teaching methods. Some institutions have even hired instructional designers to collaborate with professors on building engaging digital courses. It's also important to mention how online learning is affecting student collaboration. In traditional classrooms, students can interact casually before and after lectures, or form study groups in the library. In online settings, these opportunities are more limited. However, new forms of collaboration have emerged, such as discussion boards, group chats, and shared documents on Google Drive. Students can work on projects together in real time, even if they are in different cities or countries. Some universities use virtual lounges and online clubs to help students socialize and network, promoting a sense of belonging even at a distance. A fascinating aspect of digital education is data-driven learning. Through analytics, universities can now monitor how long students spend on tasks, which resources they access most, and where they struggle. This data helps educators personalize the learning experience. For instance, if a student watches only 50% of a video lecture or repeatedly fails a quiz, the system might suggest extra materials or notify the instructor. This is known as adaptive learning, where the course content adjusts to the learner's performance. While this can improve learning outcomes, it also raises concerns about privacy and the ethical use of student data. Of course, we must also consider the psychological and emotional effects of online learning. Some students report feeling isolated, unmotivated, or disconnected from the university community. Without the structure of physical classes, it's easy to fall behind or lose focus. Mental health has become a growing concern, prompting universities to expand counseling services, offer wellness apps, and create virtual support groups. On the positive side, some students find online learning less stressful and more comfortable, especially those who experience social anxiety or prefer working independently. Like many things, the impact depends on the individual. To wrap up this part of the episode, let's look to the future. The digital transformation of higher education is still ongoing, and we're likely to see more hybrid learning models combining in-person and online elements. This blended approach offers the best of both worlds: face-to-face interaction and the flexibility of digital tools. Universities will continue to explore innovations such as AI tutors, virtual internships, and immersive simulations. The ultimate goal is not to replace traditional education, but to make it more inclusive, personalized, and adaptable to a changing world. As we've seen, online learning has expanded the boundaries of education, but it has also introduced new challenges that universities must carefully manage. If you're preparing for the IELTS exam, this topic is incredibly relevant. In Listening Section 4, you may encounter monologues about technology, education systems, or societal change. So, I encourage you to review the vocabulary we've used today. Terms like asynchronous, adaptive learning, digital divide, and learning management systems. Understanding these words will help you not just in exams, but in real academic conversations as well. Thank you for staying with me through part 4 of our podcast series. In the next episode, we'll discuss university assessment methods and how exams are evolving in the digital age. We'll explore open book exams, continuous assessment, peer evaluation and the role of AI in grading. It's going to be another deep dive into the heart of modern education. I'm Jasmine, and as always, I'm honoured to be part of your learning journey. Stay curious, keep listening, and I'll meet you in part 5. Hello again, my dear listeners. This is Jasmine, welcoming you back to the English Fluent journey. Today we begin part 5 of our deep dive series on education and university life. In this episode, we'll explore something every university student must face, often with mixed feelings: assessment methods. Yes, we're talking about tests, exams, essays, presentations, and everything in between. But this isn't just a list of ways to measure knowledge. We'll also explore how modern assessment is changing, especially with the rise of digital tools and a growing emphasis on soft skills, creativity, and lifelong learning. Let's begin with the traditional format: written examinations. For decades, students have been judged based on how well they perform in a time-limited, high-pressure environment. These exams typically involve essay-style questions, short answers, or multiple-choice items. The goal has been to assess knowledge recall, analytical thinking, and the ability to construct logical arguments. However, critics argue that such assessments often measure test-taking ability more than actual understanding. Moreover, the pressure can lead to stress, anxiety, and even burnout among students. As a result, many universities are now reconsidering the role of timed exams and exploring alternatives. One such alternative is the open book exam. In this format, students are allowed to consult their textbooks, notes, or even online resources during the exam. While this may sound easier, it often requires a deeper level of thinking. Questions are designed to test interpretation, application, and evaluation rather than simple memorization. For example, instead of asking for a definition, a professor might ask students to apply a concept to a real-world case. The idea is to mirror how knowledge is used in professional settings, where people rarely rely solely on memory. Open book exams also reduce the temptation to cheat, since the resources are already allowed. Another trend is the move toward continuous assessment. Instead of a single final exam, students are evaluated throughout the term using smaller assignments, weekly quizzes, discussion posts, or group projects. This method encourages ongoing engagement with the material and allows instructors to track progress over time. Students receive feedback more regularly, which helps them improve. It also takes into account various learning styles. Some students express themselves better through writing, others through presentations or creative work. By spreading the assessment load, universities hope to reduce exam-related stress and create a more balanced learning experience. Speaking of group work, collaborative assessments are becoming more common. Students may be asked to complete projects in teams, create joint presentations, or solve problems collectively. This not only evaluates academic ability, but also teamwork, leadership, and communication skills. These are highly valued in the job market and help prepare students for real-world scenarios where collaboration is key. Of course, group work comes with its own challenges: uneven contribution, coordination issues, or conflicts among members. To address this, instructors often include peer evaluations, where each member assesses the contribution of others, creating a fairer grading system. Now let's talk about oral presentations and vivas. These assessments require students to speak in front of a class or a panel, explaining their research or defending their viewpoints. This method helps build public speaking skills, confidence, and clarity of thought. In some programs, particularly in the arts and humanities, students are expected to present their dissertation or thesis in a formal viva voce examination, where they are questioned by academic staff. This tests not only the content of their work, but also their ability to engage in academic dialogue, think critically on their feet, and respond with intellectual maturity. A growing focus in modern assessment is the development of portfolios. Instead of a one-time test, students compile a collection of their work over time: essays, projects, artwork, designs, or reflections. Portfolios allow for creative expression and demonstrate long-term growth. They are particularly common in creative subjects like design, media, or education, but are gaining popularity in other fields as well. The portfolio can be submitted in digital format, allowing students to include multimedia elements like videos, infographics, or audio recordings. This aligns well with today's tech-driven academic landscape. Let's shift gears a bit and talk about plagiarism and academic integrity, which are crucial in any form of assessment. With easy access to information online, it has become increasingly tempting for students to copy material or use AI-generated content. However, universities are combating this with sophisticated detection tools like Turnitin or Copyscape. These programs compare student work to vast databases of academic texts, websites, and previously submitted papers. More than just punishing misconduct, the goal is to teach students how to cite sources properly, paraphrase effectively, and develop their own voice. Ethical academic practice is a core component of university life and an essential skill for postgraduate study or professional work. Now let's talk about grading systems. Traditionally, universities used letter grades A, B, C, or numerical marks, e.g., 85 out of 100. These were sometimes converted into a GPA, or grade point average, but today we are seeing a shift toward more descriptive and holistic feedback. Instead of focusing solely on the final score, instructors provide comments on strengths, areas for improvement, and suggestions for future learning. This type of feedback promotes growth mindset, the belief that ability can be developed through effort and learning. It helps students see their grades not as judgments, but as guidance toward improvement. In recent years, technology has brought major innovations to assessment. Online quizzes with automatic feedback, AI-based essay scoring, and simulation-based exams are now part of the academic toolkit. For example, business students might complete a simulation where they manage a virtual company. Medical students may be tested through virtual patient consultations. AI tools can grade objective tests instantly and even provide analysis of common mistakes. While these tools increase efficiency, they also raise concerns about fairness, data privacy, and the loss of human judgment in assessment. Universities must balance automation with academic responsibility. Another exciting development is gamification. This involves turning assessments into interactive game-like experiences. Think of quizzes with levels, badges for achievements, or timed challenges. The goal is to make learning fun and motivating, especially for students who may struggle with traditional formats. Instructors can use platforms like Kahoot, Quizzes, or Classcraft to create engaging assessments. While gamification is not suitable for all subjects, it can be a valuable supplementary tool that increases participation and knowledge retention. As we move into the era of remote learning, we must also rethink how assessments are monitored. One solution is online proctoring, where students are watched via webcam while taking exams. Some systems even use facial recognition and eye tracking to detect suspicious behavior. While this ensures exam security, it can feel intrusive and uncomfortable for students. There are also concerns about false positives. What if a student is simply looking around the room or has technical issues? As a result, many educators are exploring alternatives that don't require surveillance, such as project-based assessments or take-home exams. Lastly, it's important to recognize that assessment should not be the end goal of education. It's a tool to support deep learning, critical thinking, and personal growth. The best assessments challenge students not just to recall information, but to connect ideas, solve problems, and think creatively. They should encourage students to reflect on what they've learned, apply it to real-life situations, and continue learning beyond the classroom. In the future, we may see more personalized assessments, where students choose how they want to demonstrate their understanding through essays, podcasts, video projects, or interactive designs. So, as we wrap up part 5 of this podcast, I invite you to reflect on your own learning journey. What kind of assessment works best for you? What challenges have you faced during exams, and how have you overcome them? Whether you're preparing for IELTS or studying at university, remember, assessment is not just about proving what you know, but about discovering what you're capable of. It's a mirror of your effort, growth, and potential. And as always, the more you engage with learning, not just for grades but for understanding, the more meaningful your education becomes. Thank you for spending this time with me. I hope this episode has given you deeper insight into the world of university assessment.